18 days after the March on Washington, Birmingham, Alabama, a bomb exploded in the 16th Street Baptist Church just before a Sunday morning service. 15 people were injured. 4 children were killed.
Things had been so beautiful, and now it was worse than normal.
On that day, we was going to have a youth day program, and we were so excited. So we came into the ladies' lounge to freshen up. And while we was in the ladies' lounge, I was looking out the door, and I seen Denise McNair and Cynthia Wesley and Carol Robinson. Their class turned out. So they came in the ladies' lounge and went on to the other side to use the stall. When they came out, Denise McNair, she was in front, so she walked over to my sister Addie and asked Addie to tie the sash on her dress. And when she turned to reach her hand out to tie it, that's when I heard a loud noise. Boom! It was so loud, all I can do was holler, Jesus, Addie, Addie, Addie. And but she didn't answer. So all of a sudden I heard someone holler, somebody bombed the 16th Street Church. And I found out who that person was. He was one of the deacons upstairs. When he heard the noise, he said he came down to check it and see what it was. But when he began to take the step had been blown away. So he jumped down and he looked into the hole, and I was just standing there. And it was just awful. And when this guy said that, they rushed in, I found out his name later. His name was Samuel Rutledge. So I met him later on through the years. For a long time, I was angry. I was angry at what had happened because of the fact that my sister was killed and my friend was killed, and I lost, my right eye. And I went through life. I was in a nervous state, and the trauma just had me so fearful. I was really afraid, really, to go back into a church.
So, my friends, they did not die in vain. God still has a way of wringing good out of evil. History has proven over and over again that unmerited suffering is redemptive. That in spite of the darkness of this hour, we must not despair. We must not become bitter, nor must we harbor the desire to retaliate with violence. Life is hard, at times as hard as crucible steel. It has its bleak and difficult moments. He will discover that God walks with him, and that God is able to lift you from the fatigue of despair to the buoyancy of hope, and transform dark and desolate valleys into sunlit paths of inner peace. And no greater tribute can be paid to you as parents, and no greater epitaph can come to them as children, and where they died, and what they were doing when they died. They died between the sacred walls of the Church of God, and they were discussing the eternal meaning of love.
Tragic events that have developed over the last few weeks in Birmingham must rest.
As the recessional came out, there Dr. King was, and I looked at him. We were looking at each other a few feet away, just like you and I right now. Most powerful moment of my life. Because even as a young kid, I admired him because I understood what he was trying to do. Years later, there was the Civil Rights Act, 1964, the Voting Rights Act, 1965. All of that came about as a result of what black folk had to experience in Birmingham, and in particular, the bombing where the girls lost their lives. Isn't it ironic that we're having to go back and visit voting rights 60 years later?
I was the one who wrote the poem that's in the State Department in Washington now, and also in the Civil Rights Museum. I call the poem The Roses. It says, scour the pages of history. I doubt if one could find a nastier stain, a bloodier blot on the escutcheon of mankind. It seared the consciousness of a nation. It touched the marrow in our bones, but it stiffened our spines to face down tyranny, the hoses, dogs, and stones. No longer will we weep, prostrate beside your graves, for you were sacrificial lambs by which a nation would be saved. Freedom is so sacred, oh, the price that she imposes. No longer shall we complain of thorns, enough to have the roses.
I didn't know about the two boys until I started doing research in Birmingham myself. Because people in Alabama, people in Birmingham, they know about those two boys. But outside of Alabama and outside of the South, what most people know about that moment is more the mythic history than the actual history.
That day, my friend came by. He said, you should have stayed because the one they found without no head, that was your sister. But I didn't stay. I got scared and ran. And I left her buried underneath all those bricks. I didn't know she went to that church. I left her buried underneath all those bricks.
I have to say some very reckless things tonight. And so I want to make it absolutely clear that I am talking for myself. I am not, I might be at other platforms and other occasions, more or less representing this or that organization or this or that committee. But tonight, I am talking to you as Jimmy Baldwin, who was born in Harlem 39 years ago, who has a certain responsibility to the people that produced him. That is all of you. And I'm speaking to you, if I may say so, not as an organizer, and not as a Negro leader, and not as a public figure, not as any of those things, but as one of the poets that you produced. A few days ago, it was suggested by some of us, as forcefully as we knew how, that in order for the country to be unable to ignore and to forget the slaughter of 6 children in an American city, and in order to join the issue and bring the battle to where the battle really is, that is to say, to strike at the economic structure, that no one, black or white, should buy any presents for Christmas.
It shook the very fabric of our society broadly, not only in Birmingham, but in the country, because the 4 little girls dressed in white for Sunday school can be blown to pieces because of hatred. Everyone has to stop and think, where are we going as a society?